is Brazilia, and there's some chairs over there. We got some seats up front. So, yeah, just go ahead and grab your chair and set it up wherever you want. Good. What's the next song? The next song that we're going to do is John Coltrane's Grand Central. John Dixon was, along with Adam Cardine, was the bass player from earlier. He was our bassist back in the fall in the combo, so I'm going to ask him to come up and share.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming this evening. Didn't really prepare anything to say exactly, but I'm just going to talk about what the Coltrane combo has meant to me. And like Joe said, I played last semester on bass. And I'll just say this was probably the highlight of last semester for me. Every week we rehearsed on Wednesdays from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Even though I was absolutely exhausted by the point of the week, this kind of revitalized me. I felt so awake after. And I think probably the biggest thing I took from this was just about how this music and any kind of music is, like the core of it is about doing it for love. It's easy to kind of get lost in the kind of appeal of looking cool, like playing good licks like Joe said, but this combo has taught me that it's really about love and friendship, playing for your friends, playing with your bandmates, and it becomes a lot more fun when you do it for that reason. So that's kind of my experience, and I hope you enjoy the next tune, which is Naima.
think
This is Miles
Yeah.
DeWalla, our drummer, everybody.
So I guess just to keep it brief, playing in this combo, I've been in here this combo for a year. Playing with all these people, I've just created like a really strong connection with all of them. And I think through this music, it is really about not only your own playing, but just how you are interacting with other people in the group and how you are playing with other people in the group. And I think I've really learned that the closer you get outside of the music with people, like the closer you get just talking to them and seeing what their interests are and all that, the better it really sounds. And so for all you musicians out there and stuff, really get to know your band, I guess, because it sounds way better when you're actually friends with them. And yeah, this music has really shown me that. Coltrane is like one of my favorites to listen to now. It's been great.
I'm going to play with these guys. set before a short intermission with, this was recorded late in John Coltrane's career. It's entitled Selflessness. Beautiful. Beautiful. We're going to take about a 5-minute intermission. Please don't go away. You want to come up and talk to any of the musicians, you're free to welcome to do that. And we'll be right back after a short pause for the cause. All right. Again, we'd like to welcome you back to our second set here with the Coltrane Lab combo, technically the Appel combo. They're our endowment. And I don't know if I've introduced the members of the band, but I'd like to do that before we go on. You already met Mr. Adam Dixon on bass. Miles Dawala on the drums. On the bass, for this semester, joining us, Mr. Adam Kadim. On piano, Mr. Luke Ellis. On tenor sax, raising his hand, Mr. Sasha Lorenzo. And on tenor, raising his left hand, Mr. Reed Landry. Reed and Adam Kadim are both graduating seniors, so we're going to miss them. So for the first song, we're going to be doing classic Coltrane from the Blue Train album. This is Moment's Notice. This was named Moment's Notice because the trombone player on the recording day, Curtis Fuller, asked Coltrane, he says, "You expect me to learn this song on a moment's notice?" It's a very difficult set of changes, and that's how the tune got its title. Here we go.
compliment to both Reed and Sasha and Luke. Those are fantastic solos, yes? My name is Paul Merrill, and I'm the CU Jazz Studies Director here at Cornell. One thing that the music faculty especially will attest to, is that people like myself and Mr. Salzano get to not only work with a student in one class here and one class there, but we get to work with them for all 4 years. And so we really have the opportunity to see them grow, and to talk to them more and to get to know them as humans. And so we really love that part of our job, but it's always bittersweet when our seniors leave, because they've contributed so much to the program. In 2017, I had a young trumpet player by the name of Avi Pinales. Avi came to office hours, sat down and said, "Paul, I have this really great idea." I said, "Knock me out, what's going on?" Why don't we take honors chords and give them to all of the graduating seniors for their contributions to the jazz program? And I stopped for a second. I said, "Avi, that's one of the greatest ideas I've ever heard." And unfortunately, that year we lost Avi right before graduation. So I've named these Avi chords since then. And Avi's parents did get one that year. So I like to honor Avi and Avi's memory, and also all of the seniors, and also the great founders of this music. So honors chords, for those of you who might not know, are adornments that students wear on graduation for their contributions. And our jazz chords here at Cornell are not red. They're blue and black. And so black honors all the great Black Americans who've created this amazing music, and blue honors the blues, because without the blues there would be no jazz or American music. So I'd like to present these two jazz chords to Reed Landry and Adam Kadim. Now please enjoy Coltrane's After the Rain.
sad moment because I've been with this band for a whole year, and this is our last performance. I'm sure we'll come together again, I hope, in the future sometime. But I think this year has been a year of, well, something different for all of us. But for me, a lot of searching, inner searching, and trying to find out, what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? I think Coltrane's music has that feeling within it all the time. He's always searching for something. If you look at what he says about his music, that's kind of what he says, that he's looking for a certain sound or to express something he has inside. And he never really necessarily gets there because there's always somewhere further you can go. He was always progressing his music, taking it to the next step, even when audiences didn't appreciate it. But now they've kind of learned to appreciate the genius in what he's done. And people are still catching up. So for me, it's been sort of an invitation to not worry about whether I've reached something and just keep going forward and keep searching. So I think, I listen to this music and that's the feeling it gives me. I hope maybe it gives you that feeling too, that you're okay to be, unsure or to not know exactly where you're going, but that you're going somewhere. So yeah, thank you to this group. Thank you to the audience for listening to us play. It's been a great time, and we have a few more songs. So that's all. Thanks.
I also had the great pleasure of seeing Sasha and Reed every week for lesson 2. It's been a great joy, guys. And I'm going to bring up another one of my students, and we're going to ask Sam Rubin to join the group for a couple numbers. Sam is also a graduating senior. That song is, it's entitled Resolution. It's the third movement from John Coltrane's great masterpiece, The Love Supreme. One of the coolest things watching these guys play is looking over at Luke Ellis at the piano, and as other people are soloing, he's just smiling because he's enjoying the other players. And then it's even cooler when I watch him take a solo and he starts smiling during his own solo. It's
That's
really
normally
cool.
when I slip a little bit.
So I'm going to ask Luke to share a little bit. Come on up, Luke.
Hey everyone. So about 2 years ago, I got this email from Paul, and it was forwarded from the pastor at the Protestant Cooperative Ministry, and they were looking for a music director for the year. So every Sunday, they wanted a pianist who could also direct a choir. And I had no familiarity with church music or choir direction, or even Christianity. But I took the job because I thought this would be a great learning experience, and also the money was pretty good. What I did not expect was to, I guess, kind of fall in love with the community there. I still haven't read the Bible. I don't really. I'm slowly picking up what's going on. But they're a super relaxed group of Protestants, and what I realized is every Sunday it's my place to be spiritual, and that's what the preacher was focused on. She wasn't trying to evangelize anyone. She was just trying to give us a peaceful place where we could collect our thoughts and reflect on the week and prepare for the next week. So I did that for a year, and then I finished that job, and they found someone else who had a PhD. So yeah. I stayed. I joined the choir as a singer. Then I have some singing experience, but I mean it's not my strong suit. That has been a great learning experience. So I still go to church every Sunday, now unpaid. So this past year, I realized that, or last semester Wednesday nights and this semester Thursday nights is another one of those places where I get to be spiritual, and it's much more abstract than in church. And it took me a while to get there, but I think it has reached into every other part of my playing. I love the American songbook and straight ahead jazz, and playing this music has given me so much more control over expressing my emotions in those mediums as well. And a lot of time when I'm playing with this group, I get goosebumps, and there's just like a lot of magical moments, and I'm gonna miss it next year. But I'm very thankful for this past year. So.
Thank you.
do our last song, I'm going to ask Adam and then Reed to come up and share a little bit. Come on, Reed.
Hello, everyone. So I actually wrote something because today the line for live was like really long. I don't know if y'all saw that, but the library gets crazy during finals week. So I thought, waiting in this enormous line, like, you know, I should really write something, put some respect on Coltrane name. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about what I wrote. So in the philosophy of aesthetics, there is a concept known as the sublime. And there are a few ways to describe the sublime. Kant describes the sublime as a feeling that arises when we are aware of divine experiences, or what he calls a priori, or beforehand knowledge. Universal validity, independent of any experience that you may have. So the sublime often reaches us as incomprehensible, beautiful, and overwhelms us in magnitude and grandeur. Think of the view from the top of a mountain looking down, or the scale of the cosmos, for example. We all experience the sublime differently, but from the time we are born until the day we've all reached right now, we have come to understand it intimately. This is what I believe John Coltrane is principally concerned with. This is what I believe he wishes to capture in his music. It's no surprise that Coltrane found spirituality in his musical expression. Coltrane did not only play to discover what was within him, but what was all around him. He did not just play for others or for himself, but for a higher God he believed in. Somehow, deep down, I always knew such a thing was possible with my own playing with other people and listening to music, and I'm sure you all have a similar experience, but I've never seen hard proof of it that really reinforces that idea so strongly until I discovered John Coltrane. I still remember hearing Selflessness for the first time coming out of Joe's laptop speakers that are always propped on his little wooden table that he brings out during rehearsal. Hearing the fugue and joyous cacophony of John Coltrane, Pharoah Sanders, McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison, and Elvin Jones, it hit me like a bus. It's still, to this day, one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard. It was an experience that helped me know what's possible. One that gave me a little bit of hope, one that deeply scared me, and most of all, instilled me with the feeling of the sublime.
Thank you. I didn't write anything, but out of all the groups that I've played with here in my 8 semesters, and honestly, out of all the music I've seen played at Cornell, including the first music I ever saw played here, which was when I was visiting in spring 2019, and I came in this room because there was a sign outside that says jazz show inside, and I saw Paul Merrill, the director, I'm pretty sure, playing trumpet with a group, playing songs, and I don't know, I was like, maybe there's a chance for me here to do some cool stuff and make some cool art. And it's tough to find things that you're good at that help you express yourself and that you can also call art. And for me personally, in my own mental world, that's what I've been trying to do. But the key for me was realizing that in this context, it's impossible to do it alone, and really the foundation of the whole thing rests on the power of the group, and I think that's just a really powerful thing, and I'm not sure what else to say, but I love playing with these guys. I love playing music in general, and it's really great when you find a group of people that you can play with and improve with at the same time, and also, share your inner world with. So, thank you to you guys, and I love jazz. Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
What are we gonna do?
Oh, Mr. PC.
All right, we're gonna close with Mr. PC. How about a nice hand again for the Apollo Coltrane Combo. Coltrane man.
Thank you for coming.